The other project that got birthed, and Christina Inrig and her husband Mike are here, they've started this amazing sustainable real estate company, 5 years ago? With a commitment to purchasing and greening rental properties over time, to keep them accessible rents, not to make a quick hit return, but to be stewards over those properties. So they've pretty much agreed to partner with us, I think. We don't sign a whole lot of papers so far when we're doing this. But the idea is over here. It's the idea of somewhere on that strip in Hintonburg, probably, developing over the next 5 years a 4 to 6 story building that will be a demonstration physical sustainability building. Anthony Leaning and Rebecca Aird, who will be here sometime, Anthony has signed on as the architect to work with us on this. The ground floor will be the home for the West End Well. The second floor will house some offices for other forms of nourishment, such as counseling, homeopathy, maybe some NGOs like Otesha, but people who explicitly identify with the well and what it's about. And they want to locate themselves there and be in relationship to it. So the dream would be, rather than what you sometimes see is those shops have a separate entrance outside and you go up and it doesn't have much relationship to the ground. No. You go into the well, there's a central staircase that takes you up to the massage therapist, the other forms of nourishment. And those folks would locate themselves there only because they identify with the well. There wouldn't be any other good reason to do it. But the rest of the building would be multi-faceted residential. And George has been incredibly helpful in inspiring us around some of the financial models. But the idea would be people would choose to live here because they want to be part of an intentional, sustainable community in the West End. And again, the shift will be not orthodoxy, not one size fits all, not better than others, but saying, there's Anthony right there, a perfect cue. But saying there are all sorts of different ways that are true for people to be part of this community. So financially, there's a model called multi-ownership housing, where there's one mortgage for the whole building. And if I'm an empty nester and I want to buy the equivalent of a condo, I do that, and whatever that is, 12% of the building, I now own 12% of the building, and I have 12% of the equity of that building. If I'm a young person trying to make my first move into ownership, there's a chance here to develop equity. But the beautiful thing is, even if I can't manage the ownership question and I want to rent, there's a mechanism whereby the rent includes the ability for me to develop equity in this building. So I may rent as a young couple for 5 years and leave, and I actually have some equity, as opposed to the rent syndrome that... So the other thing that allows and promotes is that there'll be a diversity of people in this community. It's not going to be just older people or younger people. It's not going to just be singles or couples or... That's a monoculture we don't want to cultivate. We want to create a diverse culture for all the reasons that we know. So there'll be all sorts of shared systems, from composting, managing our waste, shared cars, shared bikes, a shared guest room. If I'm downsizing, all of us downsizers are thinking, well, what when the son comes home with his girlfriend and they need a place to stay? I need an extra bedroom. Well, no, there'll be a couple of rooms here that are in common, so I don't have to carry that myself. It's carried collectively. The piece that this is really going to explore is what can we achieve when we're doing this collectively that is really hard to do when you're just doing it household by household. The top floor will be a rooftop garden, and Anthony and I are beginning to talk about how that could be a greenhouse in the winter and slide back, just like the Dome in Toronto, but not quite as fancy. In the summer, it's a wide open space for growing, but also for barbecues and recreation. But in the winter, it's a greenhouse. Closed loop systems, innovative retail, the diversity of residents. It will be a CSA drop-off, obviously. All sorts of neat stuff. Water catchment, using our gray water, all those kinds of things. We'll be pushing the envelope. Wherever the envelope is at, whenever we start to build this puppy, we'll be pushing the envelope on that, both in terms of the physical, but also the social aspects of sustainability. And when I talked to Anthony about this originally, he said, building a green building, it's not rocket science now. We all know how to do it. More and more people are starting to do it. He says, what I like about this is starting to touch on the social sustainability, and that's a new edge. So how do we form a community that is spacious enough that people don't feel coerced, they don't feel better or worse? So, in co-housing models, quite often there are shared meals. But for some people, that's too intense. It's not what suits my stage of life. In this model, what we're going to try and create is if you want to do shared meals, it'll be really easy to find the other people in this building who want to do that, and the facilities will be there. If you don't want to do shared meals, that's cool. And you're not lesser than someone who's doing the shared meal thing. And then, of course, we're going to be building relationships with other neighbors and starting to create those same kind of flows that we talked about at the well. So, this is coming to Wellington Street sometime soon, but it's really stage 2. So we need a short-term home. It'll be a lease, probably an existing restaurant that we'll take over, make it a little bit nicer. But simultaneously, we'll be working on the West End Well as a whole residential complex. So that's about it for the vision. It's a little bit ambitious, but what the heck, So what we want to invite you to do as we move into meat eating time, we're probably good for food, is to begin to talk at your table with whoever's there about what do you find personally of interest in these ideas for yourself? What attracts you? What part of this is nourishing for you? And we'll spend some time on that, and then after we've eaten for a while, we'll start collecting some ideas. And whether it happens this evening or it happens tomorrow morning or a month from now, if you begin to sense how you want to be in relationship to this, either write it on the tablecloth, pop me an email, take me out for coffee. I'm really cheap. But the invitation is there. Anybody who wants to be in relationship to this is invited. So, I guess one thing, just to say, a neat little feature about the well, and then I'll get out of your face, but, this multi-purpose space, one of the things we want to create space for is the spiritual dimension of people's experience of making this transition. Whatever that means for them, wherever they find the source of meaning and passion and vitality in their life to deal with all the stuff we deal with. And so, we're going to have yoga in the morning. We're going to have meditation if people will organize it. We're going to have people sharing poetry in the evenings and singing music about this kind of stuff. So we're trying to figure out how do you get these uses compatible. And one of the things that we realized about the well that's really going to be challenging us to work on is we have to find a way to let go of the rush, the buzz. Most restaurants you go into, there's this frantic buzz in the room. And our sense is, even providing you with really good food really quickly, we've got to let go of that rush. We've got to find a way to be still in the midst of that. So one little idea, and I don't know if we can pull this off, but thinking, okay, if it opens at 6:30 in the morning and starts serving breakfast at 7, and there's yoga from 6:30 to 7:30, and maybe somebody's hosting a little meditation group back there, well, let's have the well operate more or less in library-like silence for the first hour and a half of the day. How freaking weird would that be? Somebody may just want to come and have a quiet cup of coffee or read their favorite morning newspaper. So we're trying to mix things here that most people aren't mixing. And our attraction to that is our sense is that that's where creativity comes from, bringing those things together. But to say it's a project that we're going to have to live into. And part of being, one who signs up to be, say, a member of this co-op is to be part of that exploration. This is working. This is not working. How is this working? We've lost sight of a piece. How do we recapture that? So, I'm going to ask Jacqueline to tell us a little bit about the food and how we get to it. But we're going to ask you something that's not very common, is that when we come back to have our meal, that we actually engage this question. Like it's work. I'm sorry, but we're asking you to work. What is it about this well or this building that excites you, that connects to you? What possibilities do you see?